was thinking it might be fun to do a summer book recommendations video, and then it occurred to me, I don't really do beach reads. What I do love, however, is atmosphere. One of my favorite things in any book I read in any genre is when the writing transports me so completely that I can feel and smell and taste and touch the environment around me. When the writing is descriptive enough for my vivid imagination to take over, and then I kind of forget that I live in the real world or in any world outside of the one I'm reading in a novel. Now, obviously, summer can look like a lot of different things depending on where you are in the world, your climate. So I have split this video into 5 different categories, 5 different types and feelings of summer. But the through line amongst all of these books, other than the fact that they're amazing, incredible, wonderful books that I highly recommend you read, and I hope you will love as much as I do, is that they have a very vivid, palpable atmosphere. You can feel the humidity, the heat. You can smell the rain on the pavement. Books where the air is hot and heavy and the descriptive language leaves you feeling all of that in such a visceral way. This is my interpretation of a summer must-reads or beach reads list. It might not be traditional, but it's very me. The first category is waterlogged. This is for the kind of summer that is just so damp. This is for books that smell like wet earth. Like it's just rained, everything feels heavy and muggy and wet. Your clothes are clinging to you, nothing seems to dry, everything is just sort of moist. For lack of a better word. And I have a number of books for this category. The first one is kind of a twofer from one of my favorite authors, Julia Armfield, who loves to write very wet books. Our Wives Under the Sea and Private Rites, both arguably equally wet, and I love them so much. Both of these are what I would consider to be literary horror, where they have horror elements to them, but are predominantly written like literary fiction. In Julia Armfield's books, water is not just part of the setting, it's not just a motif. It literally seeps into every page. It is a metaphor for the themes that she loves to explore, especially grief, memory, and identity, and this feeling of being submerged, of everything being muffled, both literally and metaphorically. Love Julia Armfield. Love both of these books. Highly recommend. Next up is a modern classic and a bit of a commentary on one of the great classics, Jane Eyre, Wide Sargasso Sea by Rhys. I love this book. It's set in the Caribbean, on a Caribbean island, and the landscape very much is present in everything. This book is very intimate and very much a psychological portrait of its 2 main characters, and yet the setting is ever present and almost looming over them. Everything is humid and lush and permanently damp. And it feels like the absolute perfect setting for this particular story. Then I have a much more recent read, The Girl with a Thousand Faces by Sunyi. This book is absolutely inextricably linked to water and to island life. So many elements here are inspired by Chinese mythology, especially to do with sea creatures. And there's also a recurring motif of drowning, both literal and metaphorical, that continues throughout the story for multiple characters and really is tied to, again, those central themes of grief and trauma and reckoning and trying to heal from such a huge wound on an entire country, in this case in China after World War II and the Japanese occupation and the huge number of civilian casualties, and how you recover from that and how you build community and belonging and feel safe again. This was such an absolutely fascinating book. It has a really unusual structure to it, a bit of an unusual lens for the storytelling, and is absolutely dripping with sadness and despair and longing for family. I would describe this as fantasy horror. It is written more like a fantasy novel, but does have many horrifying elements and pretty dark subject matter. Last up on my waterlogged list is one of my absolute favorite reads from the last couple years, and it's a bit of a genre blending experience as well. It's literary fiction, near future sci-fi, post-apocalyptic, mid-societal collapse science fiction, sort of. And it is I Cheerfully Refuse by Leif Enger. This book still makes me feel emotional when I think about it, and it's been years since I read it. This is about a journey across the Great Lakes in a very small boat, and so much of the book is literally on the water. This book chronicles both an internal and an external journey, and that literal or external journey is mapped onto the emotional journey that our protagonist goes through as he reckons with the world falling apart, losing everything he ever loved, including the love of his life, and how he can pick up the pieces and find a way forward and find hope in a world that feels like it's ending. And even just thinking about it, years after I read it, I am feeling tears build up behind my eyes. And that constant presence of the lake adds this melancholic, windswept, very much summer by the lake feeling that permeates everything. But again, it is both the literal setting and also so much tied to the metaphorical ideas that are being explored. And really, I suppose, in some ways, all of the books in this category are books that are exploring ideas of loss and grief and doing so with a lot of water imagery. And that is why they are all waterlogged to me. Next up is Overgrown. And this is kind of adjacent to Waterlogged. This is for areas of the world where summer is very hot and humid. It's about lush, verdant landscapes that feel alive enough to become characters in their own right. Themes of nature taking over, reclaiming land, fighting back against human intervention. First up, I have Palace of the Peacock by Wilson Harris. This takes place in Guyana, and it's following a small group who are traveling down a river in a small boat, and things get increasingly strange and dreamlike, and we start to lose track of what's real and what isn't, what's a dream, what's a hallucination. It is very much interested in exploring themes of colonization and both mistreatment of native peoples by the colonizing force, but also the destruction of the environment in an attempt to impose order on the landscape. And in some ways, this is about nature fighting back against that human intervention. And it is so strange and beautiful. I would highly recommend. Also in a bit of a similar vein, The Old Man Who Read Love Stories by Louise Sepúlveda, kind of a similar idea of nature fighting back against human intervention. Both very much fit this lush, verdant, the landscape is alive sort of feeling. Then I have a fantasy recommendation, The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. This one again has this feeling that nature is fighting back, that nature has a consciousness and is alive and is sentient, and it is so much intertwined into the magic and the world building of this fantasy series, and I loved that aspect of it so, so much. This is definitely a very world building, magic, and political machinations forward type of fantasy trilogy, which I think a lot of people really appreciate, but it also has a prominent sapphic romance that I thought was incredibly well done, especially in the first book. So check it out if you're a fan of fantasy. Next up for my horror fans, Myra by Nikki Gonzalez. This is a debut novel and I absolutely adored it. In some ways, this is a book where the house is the part of the setting that is most alive, but the environment, this Florida swamp landscape, is very much part of the picture as well, and very imposing, is sort of encroaching upon the house and upon the characters. It feels like a menacing, conscious presence and is very lush and ever present. Next up, for my sci-fi fans, also weird lit fans, because this is definitely a blend of both, Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. This whole series really, well, I haven't read the fourth book yet, but the first three of the original trilogy, but Annihilation, the first book especially, this is 100% a story of nature being alive and transforming everything, and not only encroaching upon human spaces and human civilization, but encroaching upon humans themselves and taking over. It is absolutely so strange and so creepy, and the environment itself is the most interesting thing about this book, and it is so vivid that I still can picture basically the entire book and where everything happens, even years after reading it. Highly recommend for my weird lit appreciators and sci-fi friends. I know I've mentioned a few Latin American classics already, but I'm going to add another one, 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I mean, what can I say about this that hasn't already been said? Tropical heat, relentless rain, lush vegetation, and generation after generation unfolding beneath the same canopy. It feels permanently overgrown and intertwined and sort of tangled in on itself in the best possible way. So good. So good. Last but not least, I have a work of speculative fiction that sort of defies categorization in terms of genre, Sorrowland by Rivers Solomon. This feels very much about transformation and change and transition and retreating from towns and cities and the human world to isolation in nature, into the forest, in service of our protagonist finding themselves and growing into the person they were always meant to be. This is a book that manages to make very common or familiar human spaces feel completely unfamiliar and terrifying and out of place. And it's absolutely fascinating, but absolutely an amazing book that I don't get the opportunity to recommend enough. Our next category is Heatwave. This is for books that make you feel sticky and hot, like you have to peel your clothes off. The physical experience of summer, especially in a city, heat radiating off the pavement, sweaty bodies, sticky air, open windows, and window air conditioning units, rattling away, restless nights, desire, exhaustion, the whole 9 yards. First off, one of my favorites, Luster by Raven Leilani. This is literary fiction, and this book so perfectly captures that sticky exhaustion of city summers where desire and discomfort and heat are all fighting for dominance and clinging to the characters. There is just a constant feeling of discomfort in this book for our protagonist, and it is executed so perfectly. I just adore how this book explores our protagonist and her self-discovery, her exploration of who she is and what she wants, and coming back to herself in a way. It is such a fascinating character study, and that ever-present, hot, sticky city summer feeling is just on every page. So good. Then another favorite, what else is new? Lucy by Jamaica Kincaid, another character study that I love so, so much. Relentless heat, the emotional tension, and a sense of displacement and exhaustion from that constant heat and dampness of summer that never seems to end. This is such a languid story, and that setting adds so much to the general atmosphere as Lucy discovers herself. Then I have another more recent read, Whoever You Are, Honey by Olivia Gatwood. Set in Santa Cruz, it's very sun-drenched. We're on the coast. Everyone is constantly just coming out of the ocean and dripping wet. It very much ties this summer setting, almost a summer vacation kind of feeling, with the internal conflict of the characters. The relentless California heat really amplifies the uncanny feeling that you get from this story. And it's literally a beach read. I mean, there's a beach. This one, I would say, is another one that kind of defies categorization. It is literary fiction, but leans into speculative elements at times, and you're never quite sure what's real and what isn't. I have some more literary fiction for you. If an Egyptian Cannot Speak English by Noor Naga. This one I read a couple years ago, and it has stuck with me so vividly. Noor Naga does such a great job with this novel in mirroring the emotional intensity between these characters and in these relationships with Cairo's relentless heat. The city feels ever present and sort of looming over these characters, and there is this emotionally charged, almost physically oppressive sense of the environment and the heat, the noise, and just city life in general that is so well done. And this book still, whenever I think about this book, I'm still a little bit in awe of the journey it took me on. It's very experimental. And last but very much not least, a modern classic, Sula by Toni Morrison. Morrison is able to capture that feeling of a long, sweltering summer, especially in childhood. There is something so nostalgic about the ways that Sula and Nell experience summers as children. And just as the heat is constantly simmering, the emotions and the conflicts are simmering just below the surface until they inevitably boil over. And this book just broke me a little bit, in the best way. Please read it. Our next category may feel similar, but it is distinctly different, okay? And I get to say so because I made the categories. This category is Smothering, and it's for that feeling of summer where the air is just too heavy to breathe. Hot and heavy, not necessarily humid, but just so hot that breathing it hurts. A claustrophobic feeling. Summer where something feels wrong just under the surface. The still air before a thunderstorm, where you feel trapped, you feel uncomfortable, where it feels like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. This is as much an emotional piece as it is an atmosphere and setting piece. And my first recommendation for this category is probably my favorite read of 2026 so far, The Safekeep by Yael van der Wouden. I've talked about this book several times already. I have a full reading vlog just for this book, but also I recently talked about it again in my mid-year freakout tag. But this is a book where the house feels so enclosed and emotionally suffocating with memories and nostalgia and legacy and expectation and duty that every single room seems to be trapping still heat. Everything is stale, everything is silent and full of tension. Oh, it's so great. It's so great. And the way that it blends that setting with the slow build of sexual tension and desire between two of the characters was impeccably done. Cannot recommend enough. Oh shit. My pile of books fell over. Next up, we have Bad Cree by Jessica Johns. This takes place in the middle of a Canadian summer, first in Vancouver and then in northern Alberta. And the setting feels so viscerally important to the story that's being explored, both for our protagonist, Mackenzie, but also for her entire family as they grapple with their grief over the loss of first her grandmother and then her sister. Hot summer nights, nightmares, and this creeping supernatural horror creates this ever-present feeling that the air is just too heavy to breathe. And it was stunning. It was so beautiful. Loved it. Next, I have a weird lit pick by Catherine Lacey, Pew. This is the version of a smothering or suffocating summer that you experience in a small religious town in the middle of America somewhere. This is the simmering suspicion and quiet hostility covered by manners and politeness. So much of this book feels like waiting for a thunderstorm that never seems to actually break, the tension that just never goes away, and it's fascinating. Last but not least in this category is historical fiction, and it is Let Us Descend by Jesmyn Ward. This one is both literally inspired by the circles of hell, takes place in the South, in the summer, in the heat. It is a searing and harrowing look at slavery in the American South, family and legacy. It is physically and spiritually crushing, but also manages to have a sense of hope and a future. Also, absolutely beautiful prose. And that, sadly, brings us to our final category, which is Scorched. This is for books that make you feel like you might absolutely perish from thirst. This is for an increasingly common, unfortunately, version of summer around the world. Drought, wildfires, landscapes, and nature that is absolutely pushed to the breaking point. And for me, in thinking about this kind of summer, I kept thinking so much about dystopian fiction, whether it's near future or far future or fantastical. And my three picks for this category all fall into that realm, although they approach it from different directions. So the first one is a bit more of a sci-fi and very near future, The Compound by Ashlyn Rawle. And this one is essentially Love Island, but taken to a dystopian extreme. In this reality TV show, the relentless heat is amplifying all of the conflict, every conflict between every contestant, every social interaction. The discomfort is so tangible, and the thirst is extremely real in more ways than one. Then I have The Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. So much of the setting here is about the extreme heat and the drought and the wildfires, the environmental collapse that is causing a scramble for resources and increasing wealth inequality and unrest and danger for your average everyday citizen. And while this duology explores so many things and really expands so much beyond that first setting where we pick up with Lauren, it never loses that constant sense of feeling like you're on the verge of the entire world just going up in flames, both literally and metaphorically, and the environmental collapse, both literally and metaphorically, and climate change and the heat and the thirst and the desperation is so much woven through the entire narrative in a way that makes it even more intense to read than it already would be. Impeccable. Very hard read, but so good. And finally, My last recommendation for this entire video, very much last but absolutely not least, one of my favorite books from one of my favorite trilogies ever. Sort of a blend, speculative fiction, fantasy, and sci-fi, depending on how you look at it, from one of my favorite authors, The Fifth Season and the Rest of the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. This is a fantasy world where the fifth season is total environmental collapse, total destruction, and then the entire world has to rebuild itself from the ashes. So much of this book feels shaped by the catastrophe, very much evokes that terror of climate change, and the world building is so impeccably done and adds so much richness to the emotional journey that the characters go on. It also has absolutely fascinating magic, and the themes are impeccable. N.K. Jemisin is a genius. I love this series so much. And that brings us to the end of this very unconventional summer book recommendations list. Beach reads, but also very much not. I hope that something on this list caught your fancy, sounded interesting to you. Let me know if you've read any of the books on this list. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please tell me if you're adding any of these to your TBR, if any of them caught your fancy. I love knowing which books have caught your eye in any of these recommendation-based videos. I just get excited for people picking up books that I love. And also, of course, if you've read some of these and they make you think of other books that you feel do the same, if you have recommendations for me for books that have really strong atmospheric writing that also gave you a feeling of summer, please leave them down below because I clearly cannot get enough. And honestly, that might just be a Canadian thing. I feel like because our summers are so short, we really tend to romanticize them. I don't even really like the heat. It's just after 6 months of snow, it's kind of nice. Like it if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know if you'd want me to do more seasonal recommendation videos like this that are a little bit unusual or off the beaten path. I feel like this could at least be a very interesting series to do for all 4 seasons of the year because I have so many books in mind that would be perfect for autumn or winter. A little bit less so for spring. Spring is a little more nebulous to me, but if I work my way chronologically, by the time I get to spring, I'll have figured it out. So let me know in the comments if you want to see the rest of the seasons. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you very soon in my next one. Bye, friends.